G'day YouTubers, this is just a very quick video on some basic boating skills. I'm putting it up because I've had a couple of questions lately from people that are new to boating about this subject, so I thought it'd be useful to make a video and put the information out there. If you've been boating for years, there's nothing in it that's new to you, but I'm hoping that it might help some of the new guys. Now, first of all, there's the red and green beacons. They're pretty easy to work out when there's two of them. Saying is red and green go between, but when they're spread out and they're not obvious which side to go, it gets a little bit more complicated. There's several sayings about which side to go on, none of which really work for me, and I'll talk about them a little bit later. Right now I'll just mention that the light sequence on these beacons is rather complicated. It's not a straightforward flash, there's various gaps in the sequences. And I'm not sure why it is so, but basically for me it works out. If it's flashing red, it's a red beacon. If it's flashing green, it's a green beacon, and I don't worry too much about the timing of it. I'll also just point out that the images in this video where I'm flashing the light on the beacon are matching the timings that are used on the real beacons. The next is the Cardinal beacons, and they're used to show where the safe water is, north, south, east or west of the beacon. It doesn't actually tell you how far you've got to travel on that safe side before it's okay to cross again. So if it says there's safe water to the west of the beacon and you pass to the west of the beacon, how far north or south have you got to go before it's safe to go back across to the east? I've always found that a little bit hard to work out, and I've always treated them as relatively localised markers. However, I have given them a wide berth. That's worked for me because I've never run aground on them. When I was up in the Whitsundays, I did see 4 beacons, north, south, east and west, that were marking a shoal, and that made perfect sense. I knew exactly where that shoal was and where to go to be safe. But I think that's the only time I've ever seen 4 Cardinal beacons marking a spot. I'm just going to have a look at each of the Cardinal beacons in turn so you're familiar with them, and I will leave the video run so that they go through their full flash sequence so that you understand what they look like for night time. First of all, we'll look at the north beacon. That's very obvious. The 2 triangles point upwards. The compass rose on the charts points upwards for north, so you shouldn't misidentify or forget just which way the north cardinal points. Both triangles up, easy peasy. Going around clockwise, the next one is the east cardinal, and that is identified by a triangle pointing up and a triangle pointing down. If you're travelling at night, you need to count the light flashes on all of the cardinals so that you know which one you're looking at. The ones that I used to have most problems remembering were the east and west cardinals. I know it's fairly simple. East cardinal, one up, one down. West cardinal is the opposite, but when we get to the west cardinal, I'll show you a little memory trick I've got for remembering which is which. As I've said, the north and south are easy. North, both triangles up. South, both triangles down. East and west are the only 2 you can possibly confuse. Continuing in the clockwise direction brings us to the south cardinal, and again both triangles point down. The southern arm of the compass rose on a map points down. Can't confuse these ones, or at least you shouldn't confuse these ones. The north and south ones are easy. And finally, there's west cardinal, where both triangles point together. The exact opposite of the east cardinal, as you would expect. I'll just let the video run for a second to go through the light flashing. And finally, the little memory trick for remembering the difference between west and east. What I do is just imagine that the west cardinal makes a W tilted sideways, If you are in a stressful situation, I know that having memory tricks like this to help you remember even basic things prevents mistakes. That's one of the things that pilots learn is little mnemonics to help you remember things, and they're learnt by rote. You just keep repeating them till you can't forget them. And in an emergency situation, you can run through your checklist and be sure that you've got everything in order. So it doesn't matter how trivial it is, it always pays to have a little memory trick to help you remember, particularly if you need to know in a stressful situation. Next is the isolated danger mark, and again I've never seen any detail about how far you have to pass away from this to be in safe water. It just indicates there's an isolated danger and there's safe water all around it at some distance. Typically I give these things a wide berth, and it's always worked for me. The light sequence is 2 flashes, followed by a gap and 2 flashes. The beacon itself has 2 balls on top of it, so 2 balls, 2 flashes, 2 gaps. That's an isolated danger. Next is the special marks, and you'll see a lot of them where a channel splits in 2 and branches off. They also mark other things. If you read the documentation on them, they can mark a deep channel within a normal channel, so the special mark is for the deeper part of a channel which is otherwise marked by red and green beacons. If you just read the literature about these special marks, I find it very confusing about just how they can be used. But once you're out on the water and you've got your chart in front of you, or these days you've got your chart plotter in front of you, it's got all the information there and they're quite easy to figure out. Again, something I'll talk about towards the end of the video. This is a safe water mark. It basically tells you that there's safe water all around it. At first it might seem like an oxymoron putting a beacon down where there's safe water all around it, but they do have their uses. They have a single ball on top and they have 1 long flash every 10 seconds. So easy way to remember them, 1 light, 1 long flash and 1 ball on top of it. And finally, there's the emergency wreck marking buoy. It's hard for me to believe, but there's a lot of people let their boats sink at their moorings, just through inattention. They don't use it, they don't go and look at it, and next thing you know, it's underwater. And where they cause a hazard to navigation, they will be marked with an emergency buoy. And finally, I wanted to talk about which side of the red and green beacon to go when there is no opposite number, like the red and green beacons aren't opposite each other. You've got isolated red and green beacons. How do you know which side to go? Same goes for the special marks, the ones with the yellow cross on them. How do you know which way to go on them, which side of them you've got to pass on? Well, if you read the literature, it tells you that if you're going to port or from port, or more recently they use the terms downstream and upstream, referring to whether you're going towards the sea or away from the sea, and that determines which side of the beacon you pass. However, I have never been able to rationalise that with the reality of it. So I always cheat, and I think everyone should cheat. You've got a chart there, you shouldn't be out on the water without a chart, whether it's on your chart plotter or whether it's an actual paper chart. Both of them will show you which side of the beacon you should be on. If you haven't figured that out, grab a chart, turn your chart plotter on and work it out now before you go back out on the water again. It's simple as, and so long as you read your charts, you'll never go wrong. A lot of charts and the chart plotters, or at least all the chart plotters that I've seen, show a safe water line. So if you follow the safe water line, you'll be on the right side of the beacons. On paper charts, they'll often have a safe water line, but some of them don't. But where they don't, they'll show this arrow with the coloured circles beside it to show you whereabouts you pass on the beacons. I've said it in other videos and I'll just reiterate it here. Even if you've got a U-Butte chart plotter, even if you've got 2 U-Butte chart plotters on your boat, you should always carry paper maps as well. You just never know when you're going to have an electrical failure, and you don't want to be without charts at all. And that's it. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. There's been no earth-shaking information in here. It's just been all common sense and a couple of little memory tricks to help you remember what's what. Mainly, read your chart. All the information you need is going to be on your chart. There may be some chart plotters around that are using ultra-cheap maps that don't show you all the information you need. I would urge you to upgrade, or alternatively have paper maps and refer to them also to supplement the information. If you'd like to see some more of my videos, go to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to click that like button, comment and subscribe for more. Until next time, good fishing.